One of the things that's important to understand about waking up, about awakening, is that it has to be possible for anybody to wake up simply because the reality of who we are, the reality of who human beings really are, is the same for all of us, right? That all of us are awareness. And if all of us are awareness, then all of us must be able to be that. That's a no-brainer, right? So the thing in the way of being that is the conditioning, is the idea that you're not that, not just the idea that you're not that, but a whole reality has been organized and put together, and you've been put through a process of education and conditioning socially, and conditioning in every way, conditioning about who you are, conditioning about what's real, conditioning about the country you live in, the society you live in, the family you live in, all of it, you know. And it was presented to you as an education. In other words, it was presented to you like, we're going to teach you about the way it is. So it would never occur to you to question it. Why would you question it? Especially given the fact that you're a child. You know you don't. One thing about children is they know that they don't know. And then teenagers think they know. And then adults, some either think they know and they become egomaniacs, or other people start to realize that if it's true that I know what I think I know, how come my life doesn't work? Right? So there are people who are open to seeing things as they are. But this business of conditioning is so complete and so thorough that you're being the conditioning. You're being the conditioning. That when people in here talk and when people make comments about this process of awakening, one of the things I have said here often is listen to the speaking. The speaking tells it all. Watch the behavior tells it all. And what I mean by that is that the conditioning is so thorough that the person is being the conditioning when they're speaking. They're being the conditioning. It's not just that they think they're a personality and a physical body, no. They're being that when they talk about this. They're being that. So that's how insidious it is. That's how, you know, it's kind of like you're brainwashed so thoroughly that the only thing you know is what you were brainwashed to know. You don't know anything else. So here you are now, you're hearing about this other possibility, and not only are you hearing about this other possibility, but you're hearing that this other possibility is totally different than what you thought was real. Totally different. You're hearing this other possibility that who you are is totally unlike who you thought you were. Totally unlike who you thought you were. And you're hearing that reality is totally unlike what you thought it was. That's one of the reasons why this process is a process that takes time. It's a process that is for most people gradual, because you can't come out of this conditioning like overnight. You can't just have an awakening experience and then the conditioning is all reconditioned immediately. No. It's exactly the same as it always was. And this is something that keeps coming up, you know, well, there are two things that keep coming up recently. One is that this business of people who claim to be awake, who are believed to be awake, but whose behavior shows very clearly that the behavior is not the behavior of an enlightened being, that their behavior is clearly coming from a dysfunction, you know, coming from having a problematic personality. So this is something that's very important to understand, that many teachers, you know, you brought up Alan Watts. You know, I'm not telling tales out of school when I say that Alan Watts, it's pretty well known that he was an alcoholic and he was a womanizer, and he had a lot of problems. You know, he had a lot of problems. He was not His life as it was being lived would not be the life of an enlightened human being, okay? And there are many people who fall into that category, you know, who have fallen prey, you know. Another one that I mentioned here earlier was Andrew Cohen, was another guru-type character. Werner Erhard was another guru-type character. All of these people fell. You know, all of these people fell out of the fame that they had and the recognition that they had because of their behavior, because of the things that they did. And it's important to understand that one of the ways the ego maintains control is if you have an awakening, the ego will step in and say, I am awake. And that ends up poorly. That ends up poorly, because if the ego steps in and says, I am awake, then you're going to start playing God. Right? Then you're going to really hold yourself above all of humanity as a realized, enlightened human being, right? And you don't have to be related to the same way as the rest of humanity, because you're now saintly. You're now a spiritual leader. You're now a spiritual figure like that. So it's very easy. This is one of the reasons in my own case, I really don't want to get involved with fame. I really don't want to get involved in big business. You know, I mean, if you want to make a difference in the world, you really do have to get involved in big business, right? Sure. You look at some of the teachers that are out there now, it's a multi-million-dollar operation, right, that they're involved with. I can't speak for them as to whether or not they're doing it just for the money. It doesn't look like it. You know, most of these people seem to be people who have integrity and are really awakened beings. But it's very important to understand that is not always the case. And there are a lot of people out there now, and a lot of people who have been out there in the past, that present themselves as an enlightened being, right? And they may be, in terms of understanding the conceptual understandings involved in the teaching, they may be very clear about that and be able to speak on it very clearly and very powerfully and so forth. But that's not enough. That's not enough. That's why the real litmus test for enlightenment is behavior. Not just what the person says, but who are they being? Who are they being? And I can tell you from my own experience that, and because everybody that has an awakening experience has to deal with this. And I can tell you from my own experience that I had an awakening experience. And when I had that awakening experience, it was tempting to start to see myself as different and above it all. It was tempting, right? But I didn't bite. I didn't bite that hook. I realized that this is not consistent with my understanding of what awakening is. Humility is a very essential aspect of being awake. Humility is. So I didn't bite that, you know, and I really hesitated to look at what I experienced as something that made me special. I really was hesitant to do that because I just had a sense in my gut that was not realistic, that was not authentic. And out of that understanding and out of my patience with it, I was able to come to a realistic understanding about my own enlightenment. And what I came to was that, yes, I am awake, and in my awake state, I am able to no longer behave as poorly as I used to, right? I mean, if you knew me 20 years ago, you wouldn't believe it. I used to break shit when I was mad. I used to scream when I was mad. People were afraid of me when I was mad, okay? You know, you don't know me then, you know me now, right? If you knew me then, you wouldn't believe the difference, right? So when a dramatic change occurs like that, when an awakening experience occurs like that, the first aspect of it for me was that I could stop being a jerk. Brad Warner actually wrote a book called Don't Be a Jerk. He's a Zen teacher. But I could stop being a jerk. I could stop acting out. I could get angry but not be angry. You understand? I could experience anger but not act it out, right? I could keep it from coming out of my mouth. And so I was a lot easier to get along with. You know, I was a lot more pleasant. I didn't freak anybody out. My reputation for being crazy stopped being the case. So there's that. But at the same time, the job's not done. It's clear to me that there's still a lot of personality traits and a lot of personality material that I have yet to deal with effectively. And the reason I say that is because I understand and I'm clear enough about who I really am to know if I was 100% who I really am, that would show itself by unconditional love. Because that's the gold. That's the bottom line of who you and I really are, is unconditional love. And I know that I am not yet free enough to express unconditional love. I'm still hesitant, you know what I mean? I'm still hesitant of being that open. You know, like if you look at the Dalai Lama, right? He expresses unconditional love. If he's in a giving a talk to an audience, he'll go down to the audience, and the way he's being with them is like that's his family. And that's what he says. They're my brothers and sisters. But he's actually able to be that way, to be that open, you know, to get in the face to face with these people very close up with a beaming smile and an open heart. That's why when a lot of people meet him, they start to cry. Because it's a moving experience to make contact with the truth. And if somebody else is that awake and you're in their presence, it's like the atmosphere. You know what I mean? You can feel the vibration coming from them, right? You can feel the openness that's there. You can feel the receptivity that's there. You can feel the good-heartedness, you know what I mean, that's there. So that's, for me, that's been the harder part of the work, you know, to stop being inhibited, you know, to be totally open about my love for you human beings and my love for other people. That I'm still working on that part, right? But I'm not a troublemaker anymore, right? So that's kind of how I see my own process. And I don't think it's clearer to me than it's ever been that awakening is the beginning of a process that has to take place for you to get clear from the conditioning. Because until awakening happens, you're being a personality, and even if you understand the concepts, you're being a personality trying not to be a personality. That's what's happening. You familiar? You're being a personality trying not to be, so you actually talk about it that way. You know, you talk about yourself as an unenlightened being that I'm being, trying not to be. Okay? So, you know, that's the insidiousness of how deep the conditioning goes. And in order to begin to do the work to come out of that, you have to have an awakening. You have to stop being a personality. That's what the awakening is. The awakening is an actual experience of a transition from being a personality to not being a personality. It's actually an experience of moving from being a personality to not. And when you experience not being a personality, then you can go to work on your personality. But you can't be being one and go to work on it. You see what I'm saying? That's what when people come to psychotherapy, right? That's why psychotherapy is so limited. The conventional approach to psychotherapy is so limited because a person comes in, they're suffering, they're in trouble, they got difficult circumstances, right? Now, I've been doing this long enough to tell you without any doubt, the problem is going to be them. But they don't come in with that idea. You see what I'm saying? Because you guys know enough to know the problem is going to be you. The problem is going to be you because being a personality makes you a troublemaker. You know, makes you somebody who gets into the thick of the problems in your relationship and becomes self-righteous and, you know, uses your anger and uses your ability to manipulate and uses your ability to fight and run. You know, that's how you play this game called relationship, right? Yeah. So in order to be able to work on that, you can't be in it. You can't be being that. That's why when people come to psychotherapy, right, you have to be very gentle, right? Very gentle, because at some point you have to tell them the bad news. At some point you have to say, okay, it's time for us to get real. The problem here is you.
But don't most anxious and depressed people, they know it's them, don't they?
No. Not only do they not know it's them, but I'm glad you brought this up, because this has also come up recently. Not only do they not know it's them, but they understand the concepts. For example, in regard to anxiety, they understand the concepts, right? The concepts say, if you're experiencing who you really are, to quote the Course in Miracles, if you're experiencing who you really are, what is real cannot be threatened. If you're experiencing who you really are, what is real cannot be threatened. Therefore, you can be present to anxiety. It's not a threat. It's a little uncomfortable, you know what I mean? But if you're experiencing life realistically, then you understand life is not always comfortable, right? So what? It's a little uncomfortable when you experience anxiety. If you understand how all this works, you understand that the more present you are to the anxiety, the more willing you are to have the experience, the faster it will come to an end. And the less it will come up again in the future. This is the way it works, right? But when the shit hits the fan, if the anxiety is strong enough, the person goes totally unconscious, and they don't give a shit. You can say anything you want to them, but they're gone. They don't give a shit about any conceptual understanding. They don't give a shit about the truth. They only care about one thing: stop this anxiety. That's all they care about. And I work with people who get to this place with their anxiety, and I try and walk them through it and coach them and say, look, I get it. It's uncomfortable, okay? But it's not going to last forever. And who you are can be with this. Just breathe and be with it, you know, and keep functioning. Don't let it get in the way of your functioning. If you keep functioning and you stay present to the experience, it will end on its own. But at a certain point, people can't hear that. And so with certain people, I have tried to walk them through the experience, and then the next time I meet with them, I say, how's it going? Oh, I'm still anxious, which means that's all I care about. So everything I said was a waste of time, right? And that's what I mean, you know, that whether it's depression or anxiety, right? When people get into an uncomfortable mental and emotional state, all they want is relief. And you've been conditioned to expect that you should be able to get it. Because all you have to do is pick up the phone and say to your doctor, could you please call this prescription in, right? And then you get your Xanax, or you get, you know, whatever it is, you get your benzodiazepines, right? And of course, that's a whole nother problem, right? Because now we know, I mean, this has always been true, but now it's been, you know, publicized that getting off benzodiazepines is a horror show, okay? So you don't want to ever become dependent on drugs as a way of being able to function. That's not a good idea. And especially given the fact that you have the alternative, which is to go through a process of awakening in which you can literally be completely free from anxiety in the future.
But typically they blame it on the situation.
Well, the situations are real sources of anxiety. But I'm not, because you have to understand something, I'm not saying there shouldn't be anxiety. Anxiety is part of being a human being and living in this world, okay? But the idea that you expect not to have that experience is naive. That's ridiculous. If you're in a situation that is inherently going to be stressful, and situations can be inherently stressful. There will be situations that are inherently stressful, right? And when you're in that situation, if you start experiencing anxiety and you're in a stressful situation, hello, what's the problem? It's a stressful situation. So the fact that you're experiencing anxiety is healthy. You're having a healthy reaction to a stressful situation. And it's not going to last forever, right? But people, when they're in that situation, they panic. Or they panic. Oh, I can't do this. I can't stand this. You know, it's like, and the more you resist, see, the last thing you want to do, whether it's depression or anxiety, is resist. The last thing you want to do is resist. Resistance causes persistence. It's a law of the universe. Anything you resist will persist. It has to persist. And it'll get worse the more you resist it, right? So if you resist depression and anxiety, you're throwing gasoline on the flames. Now you're going to be anxious because you're anxious, right? And then you'll be anxious because you're anxious about being anxious, until it gets so big and so overwhelming you can't function. You can't move, right? And then you have to go to the crisis center. Question of simply being present. Human beings will experience anxiety. And when that happens, you don't have to run, you don't have to fight, just be there. It'll pass. It's hard to be willing to be uncomfortable. It's hard, especially if you have physical pain. Some people have chronic physical pain. It's hard to be conscious when you're dealing with serious physical pain. I understand. But the alternative is much worse. The alternative is much worse. The alternative is what? See, if you contract against the pain, right? If you resist the pain, if you struggle with the pain, if you have these reactions to the pain, like, why me? This shouldn't be happening. I don't like it. That's all resistance. That's all resistance. Okay? And it is possible to simply be present, but it takes practice. It takes practice. But you see, the whole thing is based on your ability to be present, right? As who you really are. If you're present as who you really are, you'll see what's happening clearly. And you won't let somebody piss on you. Do you understand? You'll be present. You'll notice if somebody's trying to take advantage of you. You'll notice it, right? That's what the value of being present is all about, that you can see what's happening. Not only in the world, but in your world too, at the same time, in both directions. You can see what's happening out there and you can see what's happening in here. Is it going to be perfect? See, now what? Is it going to be perfect? No, because you still have material to work on in your own personality. But you know that. You know that. So you're paying attention, right? So you're paying attention so you can see if anything comes up that's going to cause you to behave poorly. You're paying attention so you can see if that happens. And if that happens, right, you choose not to follow those thoughts. That's training your mind. See, prior to training your mind, when those thoughts occur, you just follow those thoughts. You always believe yourself, don't you? You never question yourself. Oh, I had that thought. Should I have that thought? You never do that. You have that thought, most people have that thought, and they're following it right away without any question at all. Especially if you're angry. If you're angry and the energy is up, right? You don't question what's about to come out of your mouth until a few hours later, and then you regret it. Yeah. But if you're awake, you can see it in real time, and you can see it for what it really is, and you know not to say it. What's the point? You see what I'm saying? If you want to have the outcomes you want to have in your relationships, you have to start paying attention to what you're doing that's not producing those outcomes. And stop doing that. Yeah, it works. It works to think about something relative to your behavior and think about whether or not it makes sense for you to behave that way. That's the working mind. That's not just thinking for the sake of, of masturbating your mind. That's not just thinking to just be egotistical. No, that's thinking about what's really happening and looking at it to see, what makes sense as far as what I say and what I do. And that's the first place that I think awakening impacts people, that you now can really choose to be different. Now, this brings up an interesting point. I say you can really choose to be different, but then those of you who have been following these teachings might say, well, but I thought you said that you don't have free will, right? How could I choose to be different if I don't have free will, right? Well, because when you awaken, you have the value of having your actions be acts of God. When you awaken, you have the value of having your actions be acts of God. In other words, since you're not being the personality anymore, right, you can allow yourself to accept that the source is the source of workable behavior. So you give your attention and you give your actions to the source. Because now you have access to the source. Because if you're not being a personality anymore, then what are you being? You see? If you're not being a personality anymore, then what are you being? No? You're being the instrument of God. You're being the expression of the truth. Not yet perfect, right? There's still work to be done to refine it, right? But it's a damn sure hell of a lot better than it used to be. A lot better than it used to be. And your life is a lot different than it used to be. You're a lot calmer. You're a lot more at peace. You don't have, when I think about it, we're talking about anxiety, right? I don't even think about whether I'm anxious, let alone be anxious. Really. And one of the things that I think makes it sometimes difficult for me to appreciate where other people are is because that's history for me. Do you understand? That's history for me. That doesn't go on anymore, so it's sometimes I have to remind myself, you know what I mean, that I used to be like that, right? But I haven't been like that for a while now, so it's kind of like, it's almost like I expect other people to behave, to get the same thing. But it's not like that. You have to wake up. First of all, that's one of the things that I like about Angelo. There's two things that he says. One, anybody can wake up, right? The title of his book is Wake Up, It's Your Turn. Anybody can wake up. That's one thing he makes clear. And then the second thing he makes clear is awakening is a literal experience. And one of the things that's coming out from him and other people is that the idea that awakening was this sudden, profound, intense experience was what used to be believed that that's what it was. But now with the new way that things are being taught and the new non-dual teaching and the way it's being taught and the way it's being understood and the numbers of people that are listening to it and participating in it, it's becoming evident that this process of awakening is actually very gradual. For most people, it's not sudden. For most people, even for you guys who've been in this class, right? Are you more awake now than you were before you came here? Sure. Of course you are. How could you not be? How could you not be? And it's a gradual process, right? It's a gradual process. If you just stay with it. That's why I harp on consistency. I think consistency is maybe one of the most important concepts when it comes to doing this work. That's why I say to people, come to me and let me know when you've established a meditation practice. Not when you do it once in a while, but almost nobody that I talk to, right, can say to me, I do it every single day without fail. I have a meditation practice. That's not a question. That's not an issue. Right? You've got to get that. If you can't get that going with consistency every day without fail, you're not yet powerful enough to be awake. Do you understand? You're not, if you can't even do that, if you can't even do a simple thing once a day for 10 minutes, you waste more time than that. If you can't even do that, you're not yet powerful enough to be awake. If you can do that, now you have trained your mind enough that it's not dominating you anymore, and now you can start to be awake. Now you can start to use the mind instead of having it use you, like that. All right, that's enough trouble.